The sidewalk was a sea of people, but the only thing I heard was a sob so quiet it felt like a ghost. His name was Hoseol, and he was sitting by the fountain like a fallen prince in a tiny bespoke suit. I thought I was just doing the right thing. I thought I was just walking a lost kid back to his parents. Don't let go, Una. If you let go, the shadows will see me. I didn't realize that by holding his hand, I had just activated a security protocol that turned every camera in the city toward me. I wasn't just a stranger anymore. I was the shield. What happens when an American tourist becomes the only person a billion-dollar heir trusts? Una is about to find out that the Soul Way is paved with secrets and guarded by a man who doesn't take no for an answer. If you're ready for a story about unexpected bravery and the price of protection, hit that subscribe button. Let's dive into the mystery of Hoseol. I came to Seoul to find myself, not to find a kid who carries a signet ring worth more than my college tuition. The moment I touched Hoseol's shoulder, the air around the fountain turned cold. It wasn't the weather, it was the sudden silence of the street performers and the way the black SUVs began to merge from 3 different directions. "Hoseol!" a voice boomed, cutting through the crowd like a serrated blade, and a man stepped out of the lead car. This was the chairman, Hoseol's father. He looked like he was carved from granite, his eyes scanning me with a terrifying mixture of gratitude and extreme suspicion. He didn't see a woman who helped his son, he saw a security breach. "Who are you?" he demanded, his shadow falling over us. "And why is my son holding your hand as if his life depends on it?" "My name is Una," I said, standing tall, my heart hammering a rhythm I didn't know I could survive. "I came to Seoul to find myself, not to find a kid who carries a signet ring worth more than my college tuition." The chairman froze. No one spoke to him like that. He looked at Hoseol, who was hiding behind my denim jacket, then back at me. "Hoseol hasn't touched another person since the accident," the chairman murmured, his voice losing its edge. "The fact that he's holding you, it's not just a choice, it's a command. You're coming with us." We were led into the Choi estate, a palace of white marble and high-tech sensors. The chairman turned to me, his face illuminated by the security monitors. "Una, you have a choice. You can take this check and forget you ever saw the boy by the fountain." He paused, pointing to the screen where a group of men in gray suits were currently searching Una's empty hotel room. "Or you can stay. But know this, Hoseol isn't just an heir, he is the key to the entire national grid. And those men at your hotel, they aren't the police. They're the people who realized you have the key in your pocket." I looked at Hoseol. He was still holding my hand. I wasn't just a tourist anymore. I was the only thing standing between a child and the people who wanted to turn him into a ghost. The water from the fountain felt like ice spray against my skin, but Hoseol's hand was burning. I'm a girl from Chicago. I know when a neighborhood is quiet and when it's waiting. Right now, this shopping district is waiting. The people walking past us are moving too rhythmically. They aren't shoppers, they're a perimeter. "Hoseol," I whispered, kneeling so our eyes were level. Your dad is here. He looks important. Are you ready to go back?" Hoseol didn't look at the man in the shark-skin suit. He looked at my wrist, at the simple braided bracelet my mother gave me. "If I go back, they'll put the pulse on me again. Stay, please?" The chairman approached. His presence was like a physical wall. "Step away from the boy, Ona. You've done your civic duty. My men will take it from here." I saw it on the chairman's tablet, a red line and a blue line merging into one. He wasn't looking at me with gratitude. He was looking at me like a scientific miracle or a threat to his control. "He's not a package, Mr. Choi," I said, standing up. I didn't let go of Hoseol's hand. I felt the collective intake of breath from the dozen guards surrounding us. "He's a child, and he just asked me to stay, so unless you're planning on dragging us both through this mall, I suggest we find a more private place to talk." The chairman's eyes narrowed. For a second I thought I'd pushed too far. Then he signaled his men to stand down. "Fine," he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous rumble. "But once you enter my gates, Ona, the world you knew, the tourist who just wanted to see the palaces, is dead. You are now the most important variable in the Choi Syndicate. I hope you're as brave as you look." We didn't go to a cozy bedroom with stuffed animals. We went to the 3rd floor, past 3 biometric checkpoints. When the final door opened, my stomach dropped. Hoseol's nursery was a panoramic room overlooking the city, but it was filled with flickering monitors, wireless EEG headbands, and a medical-grade bed. There were no toys, only touchscreens and sensors. "What is this?" I asked, my voice echoing off the sterile walls. "This isn't a child's room, it's a laboratory." "It's a safe room," a cold feminine voice answered. A woman stepped out from behind a bank of servers. This was Director Kang, the head of security. She was dressed in a sharp gray tactical suit, her hair pulled back into a knot so tight it looked painful. She held a tablet that was displaying a live feed of my biometrics. "Miss Una," Kang said, her eyes scanning me like I was a glitch in her system. "I am the reason this boy is still breathing, and right now you are a contaminant in my sterile environment." She's trying to intimidate me. She thinks because I'm a tourist from Chicago, I don't recognize a bully in a designer uniform. But I grew up with 3 brothers and a mother who taught me that the loudest person in the room is usually the most afraid of losing control. "You're tracking his heart rate," I said, pointing to the wall of monitors, "but you're not tracking his happiness. Look at him, Director. He's terrified of this room." "His happiness is a luxury we cannot afford," Kang snapped. She stepped toward me, attempting to pry Hoseol's hand away. "He is the key to the national infrastructure. If his stress levels spike, the encryption protocols he carries could fail. He needs to be sedated and scanned. Step aside." Hoseol shivered, hiding his face in my side. "No," I said, stepping between the boy and the director. I didn't raise my voice, but I felt the weight of every security camera in the room focusing on me. Director Kang paused, her thumb hovering on a signal button on her tablet. The tension in the room was so thick it felt like the air was being sucked out of the vents. I can see it in her eyes. She's calculating the PR disaster of a high-profile security director physically removing an American citizen who just saved the air. She's trapped by her own protocols. "Fine," Kang whispered, her voice a low threat. "But don't think you're his savior, Una. You're just a temporary sedative, and sedatives are always discarded once the patient is stable." 3 members of the Choi Syndicate Board sat across from me. They didn't look like villains. They looked like bankers. The man in the center pushed a single sleek tablet toward me. "Ms. Una," he began, his voice smooth as polished marble, "we've analyzed your background. You're a freelance designer from Chicago. You have a mortgage, a student loan, and a penchant for expensive coffee. We appreciate your service to Hoseol. This is a gratitude settlement." I looked at the screen. The number had so many zeros it didn't look like money anymore. It looked like a phone number. It was enough to buy a block in Chicago. It was enough to never work again. "All you have to do," the man continued, "is sign the non-disclosure agreement and board a private jet we've prepared. You'll be home before sunrise." It's the golden handshake. They want to delete the memory of me from Hoseol's head by putting a price tag on my silence. But something felt wrong. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a series of rapid, frantic vibrations. I pulled my phone out. I didn't look at the check. I looked at my notifications. "Warning, your Google account has been deactivated. Alert, your Instagram handle, @UnaDesign, no longer exists. Error, 404, profile not found. LinkedIn." "What is this?" I whispered, my heart beginning to race. I typed my name into a search engine. 0 results. "We aren't just buying your silence, Una," the man said, his smile never reaching his eyes. "We are ensuring the security of the air. To the world, you never came to Seoul. You never sat by that fountain. In 10 minutes, your digital footprint will be a complete void. You'll have the money, but you'll be a ghost." They're not just paying me to leave, they're erasing my existence so they can control the narrative of what happened to Hoseol. They're making me an anomaly, a person who doesn't exist on paper. They think I'll be grateful for the wealth, but all I feel is a cold, sharp rage. They're trying to turn me into a shadow. "You're fast," I said, sliding the tablet back to him, untouched. "But you forgot one thing. I'm not just a digital profile. I'm the woman whose hand your son is still calling for." Suddenly, the heavy double doors of the council room burst open. It wasn't a guard. It was Hoseol. He had slipped past the censors, his face pale, his eyes wide with a terrifying clarity. "Una!" he shouted. He didn't look at the board. He looked at me and then at the tablet. With a strength no 6-year-old should have, he grabbed a heavy glass carafe from the side table and smashed it onto the tablet, shattering the golden handshake into 1,000 digital shards. "She stays," Hoseol said, his voice trembling but firm. "If she goes, I stop the pulse. I mean it." The board members stood up in unison, shock breaking their masks of composure. Hoseol wasn't just throwing a tantrum, he was threatening a total system shutdown. We entered the library, a 3-story cavern of dark wood and the smell of ancient paper. It was the only room in the house that didn't have a digital screen. Hoseol led me to the very back, where the shadows were deepest, and stopped at a shelf filled with Old English literature. "My mother told me that if the shadows ever tried to erase someone, I should look for the unwritten page," Hoseol whispered. He reached for a worn copy of The Great Gatsby. As he pulled it, a silent mechanism whirred. A small compartment slid open behind the mahogany trim. Inside wasn't money or jewels. It was a single vintage Polaroid photograph and a handwritten ledger. I felt the air leave my lungs. The photo was old, the edges yellowed. It was a woman who looked exactly like me. Same hair, same jawline, same eyes. She was standing in front of the same fountain where I found Hoseol, but the date on the back of the photo was 1994. "That's my mother's best friend," Hoseol said, his voice trembling. "Her name was Sarah. She was American like you. My mother told me that if I was ever lost, I should look for the woman with the Chicago spirit. She said the syndicate couldn't track a heart that doesn't belong to their system." I opened the ledger. It wasn't a diary. It was a list of names, the board members I had just seen, and beside each name was a transfer protocol. I realized it then. My assignment wasn't a coincidence. My sister's disappearing act, my mother's old stories about her gap year in Seoul, it was all connected. I wasn't just a random tourist. I was the fail-safe. My DNA was the only thing that could override the pulse encryption because it was the only one the syndicate didn't have on file. "They didn't just kick you because I held your hand, Una," Hoseol whispered, looking up at me with eyes far too old for a child. "They've been waiting for you to find me. The board wants the encryption key inside me, but they need a relay to extract it without killing me. They think you're that relay." Suddenly, the library's silent alarm began to pulse, not a sound, but a rhythmic flickering of the overhead lights. "They're coming," Hoseol said, clutching the ledger to his chest. "Director Kang is going to try to sink us. If she does, they get the key, and we both become empty." I looked at the photo of the woman who looked like me. I looked at the boy who was being used as a human server. My past was gone. My digital life was erased, but I finally knew why I was here. I wasn't the shield. I was the firewall. "Hoseol, do you trust me?" I asked, my voice hardening. He nodded, his small hand slipping into mine. "Then we're not staying for the night. We're leaving, and we're going to use the one thing Director Kang can't track, the Chicago spirit." We moved toward the service entrance near the kitchen. I had a plan. My ally was Mr. Park, the soft-spoken head butler who had whispered the security codes to me earlier that afternoon. He was the only one who seemed to look at Hoseol with pity instead of greed. "The transport is waiting at the north gate, Miss Una," Park whispered as he handed me a tray of hors d'oeuvres to mask our movement. "The cameras in that sector will glitch for exactly 60 seconds. Go, now." My heart is a drum solo against my ribs. We slipped through the heavy oak doors and into the cold night air of the gardens. The gate was in sight. Freedom was 100 yards away. I could almost feel the Chicago wind on my face. We reached the gate. A black sedan was idling, just as promised. Mr. Park was already there, holding the door open. "Get in, quickly," Park said, his voice urgent. Hoseol hesitated. He looked at Mr. Park, then at the car, then back at the house. "Una, the shadows don't smell like jasmine. They smell like ozone." Before I could ask him what he meant, I heard the click. Not a gun, but the electronic lock of the car doors engaging the second we stepped inside. The car didn't move. Instead, the interior lights snapped on, blinding us. Mr. Park didn't get into the driver's seat. He stood outside the reinforced glass, his kind face twisting into a mask of cold professionalism. He tapped his earpiece. "Target secured," Park said. "The relay is in the box. Initiate the sync." "Mr. Park," I slammed my fist against the window, "you said you wanted to help him." "I am helping him, Miss Una," Park said through the external speaker, his voice devoid of emotion. "Hoseol is a god, and gods shouldn't be wandering the streets of Chicago. They belong in the machine. Director Kang offered me something your spirit couldn't, a seat at the table. The ultimate betrayal. He didn't help us escape the gala. He used the escape to isolate us. In the house, there were witnesses. In this car, in this dark corner of the estate, we're just data waiting to be harvested." I looked at Hoseol. He wasn't crying. He was staring at the dashboard, his eyes beginning to glow with a faint digital amber. "Hoseol," Hoseol whispered, his voice sounding multi-layered, like a chorus. "He forgot one thing." "What's that, baby?" "He gave me a seat with a sync port." Hoseol reached out and touched the car's touchscreen. "And I'm the one who writes the code." "Hold on, Una," Hoseol shouted. The engine roared without a key. The car lurched forward, bypass coding the electronic brakes. We didn't drive toward the exit. We drove straight through the decorative garden walls, the reinforced chassis smashing through stone like it was wet cardboard. We burst through the north gate just as the 60-second glitch ended, sliding onto the wet sole asphalt. "We can't stay in the car. It has a GPS pulse that Director Kang can track from a satellite. We need to go where the signals are messy. We need to go underground." We abandoned the smoking car 2 blocks from the Gangnam Station entrance. The sun was just beginning to touch the horizon, the golden hour for commuters. Thousands of people in beige trench coats and black suits were pouring into the mouth of the subway. "Hoseol, keep your head down," I whispered, pulling my midnight blue gown tight and throwing a discarded oversized hoodie I found over it. I looked like a mess, but in a crowd of millions, a mess is invisible. We slipped past the turnstiles. The station was a labyrinth of neon signs and the smell of toasted seaweed and damp concrete. My phone is still a brick, but I can see the digital ghosts of Director Kang's search. Every large monitor in the station, the ones showing skincare ads, suddenly flickered. For a split second, my face appeared, then Hoseol's. They're using the station's facial recognition. We have exactly 3 minutes before the shadows realize we aren't on the street. "Una, look!" Hoseol pointed at a group of students in bright yellow uniforms. I grabbed a discarded shopping bag, and we blended into the middle of a tour group. We moved like a school of fish. Every time a security camera swiveled toward us, Hoseol would squeeze my hand, and I'd feel a spark, a tiny EMP that caused the camera's lens to focus on a reflection instead of our faces. We boarded the Line 2 train just as the doors hissed shut. I leaned against the glass, my breath fogging the window. Through the reflection, I saw them. 3 men in gray suits, standing on the platform, looking confused. They were holding tablets, staring at error messages. "We're safe for the length of 5 stations," but as I looked at Hoseol, I saw the cost. His nose was bleeding. The sink was draining him. He's not just a hacker. He's a child who is literally burning his own energy to keep us invisible. "We have to get off at the next stop," I whispered, wiping his face with my sleeve. We need a place where there are no cameras. We need to find the unwritten page my mother talked about. Hoseol leaned his head against my shoulder. Ona, I can hear the city. It's all screaming for me to come back. Hoseol collapsed onto a pile of old sound-deadening foam, his face pale. I scrambled to the center console. It was a prehistoric beast of sliders and vacuum tubes. I pulled out the drive Hoseol had rescued from the library and looked at the ancient port. Analog to digital, I muttered, my fingers flying. I need a bridge. I stripped a copper wire from a broken headset and bypassed the drive's security encryption by grounding it to the radio's main transmitter. It was a Chicago fix, crude but effective. The speakers crackled. A hiss of static filled the room, then smoothed out into a familiar, warm tone. It wasn't the chairman's voice. It wasn't a syndicate briefing. Una, if you're hearing this, it means you found him. It means the frequency finally synced. Una, internal thought. My heart stopped. That was my mother's voice. Not the tired, gentle woman I left in Chicago, but a younger, sharper version of her, a woman who sounded like she was standing in the middle of a storm. I couldn't tell you the truth, Una. To know the secret of the Choi family is to become a target. Your Aunt Sarah wasn't just my friend, she was my sister. And we weren't just Americans in Seoul, we were the original architects of the pulse. The recording skipped, the vacuum tubes glowing a hot, angry orange. The syndicate didn't build the encryption, we did. We built it to be a heartbeat, not a weapon. But the chairman wanted a cage. I took the master key with me to America, hidden in your DNA. Hoseol is the lock. Una, you are the key. If you combine your frequencies at the 19.5 hertz mark, you won't just unlock his mind, you'll broadcast the truth to every receiver in the city. Hoseol sat up, his eyes wide. Una, the 19.5, that's why I can hear the city. It's not screaming, it's waiting for the song. Una, internal thought. The betrayal ran deeper than I thought. My whole life, my design career, my random trip to Seoul was a long game played by a mother trying to save a child she left behind. I wasn't just the shield, I was the revolution. Suddenly, the analog needles on the console slammed into the red. A high-pitched whine pierced the room. They found the broadcast, I gasped, grabbing Hoseol. The heavy steel door at the top of the stairs groaned as if being pushed by a hydraulic ram. Director Kang hadn't tracked our phones, she had tracked the radio wave I just ignited. Una, Hoseol whispered, reaching for my hand. We have to play the song now, before they close the station. I pushed the master slider to the top. The 19.5 frequency didn't just leave the station, it hijacked every smart speaker, every car radio, and every giant neon billboard in the city. The silent syndicate was about to become the loudest story in Seoul. We walked out of the basement, not as fugitives, but as a broadcast. As we emerged into the alley, we were met by a wall of black-suited security, and in the center, looking more like a fallen king than a CEO, stood the chairman. "Shut it down, Una," he commanded. His voice was calm, but I could see the twitch in his jaw. Behind him, on a massive digital billboard across the street, his own private ledgers, the ones Hoseol and I had decoded, were scrolling for everyone to see. "You're destroying a legacy that took 3 generations to build." "A legacy built on the back of a child?" I stepped forward, pulling Hoseol with me. The guards raised their hands, but they didn't draw weapons, not with 1,000 citizens already stopping in the street to watch the screens. "You didn't build a legacy, Chairman. You built a prison, and you used my family's blood to lock the door." I can feel the sync humming between us and Hoseol. It's a warm, golden vibration. Every time the chairman tries to speak, the radio towers behind us amplify my voice, making it boom across the district like the voice of a god. He's not fighting a woman, he's fighting a frequency. Director Kang stepped forward, her eyes darting to the crowd of civilians gathering at the end of the alley. "We can still fix this, Una. Think of the stability. Think of the economy. If the Choi Syndicate falls, the city goes dark." "Then let it be dark for a while," I said, my voice echoing through the speakers of every car idling nearby. "At least people will finally be able to see the stars." Hoseol let go of my hand for a split second to point at his father. "The pulse is mine, Father, and I'm giving it away." The chairman looked at the screens. He saw his shell companies, his illegal data harvesting sites, and the truth about Hoseol's mother all being aired in high definition. The perimeter of guards began to waver. They weren't looking at us anymore. They were looking at their own phones, seeing their employer's world crumble in real time. "It's over," I whispered, though the microphones carried it to millions. "You can't arrest a signal." I looked the chairman in the eye. "The airport is expecting us. My embassy has been alerted. If we don't check in, the next broadcast won't just be files. It'll be your location. Let us go." The chairman didn't move. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked pitying. He slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out an old silver locket. He didn't open it. He just held it in the palm of his hand. "You think you're taking him to Chicago, Una," he said, his voice a hollow rasp. "You think you can just walk away from the architecture of the world?" "Watch me," I said, turning to lead Hoseol toward the waiting taxi at the end of the alley. "The pulse isn't a weapon, Una," the chairman shouted after us. "It's a life support system." I froze. Hoseol's hand in mine felt suddenly cold. "My wife, your Aunt Sarah, they didn't build the encryption to hide secrets." The chairman stepped closer, the neon light of the city making his shadow loom over us. "Hoseol was born with a cellular decay that no medicine could touch. The only thing keeping his heart beating, the only thing keeping his nervous system from collapsing is the 19.5 frequency." My heart dropped into my stomach. I looked at Hoseol. He was looking at his own hands, his expression one of dawning horror. I remembered the pulse monitors in his room. I thought they were for surveillance. They were for survival. "The towers in Seoul provide the signal, Una," the chairman whispered, standing just inches away. "If you take him to Chicago, he'll be outside the broadcast range. In 48 hours, the lullaby will stop, and so will he." "You're lying," I hissed, though my voice lacked conviction. "You're just trying to keep your key." "Check the ledger you found, Una. The transfer protocol isn't for money, it's for the battery." He looked at his son, a rare flash of genuine grief in his eyes. "He's a god in a cage, yes, but the cage is what keeps him alive. You can't take him back to your world. You have to stay in his." I looked at the taxi. I looked at the airport on the horizon. My life in Chicago, my apartment, my brothers, my safety was right there. But then I looked at Hoseol. He wasn't the heir to a syndicate anymore. He was just a boy who needed a signal to breathe. "We aren't staying in the palace," I said, my voice shaking but certain. I looked at the chairman, then at Director Tang. "And we aren't going to Chicago. If the city provides the signal, then we're going to build a new one, a signal that isn't owned by a syndicate, a signal that belongs to everyone." Hoseol took my hand. "I can hear the stars, Una. They're louder than the city." We didn't leave Seoul that night, but we didn't stay as prisoners either. We moved to the outskirts, where the radio towers meet the mountains. I'm still the most wanted woman in the city, and he's still the boy with the golden pulse. We're ghosts in a system we're slowly rebuilding, one heartbeat at a time. The silent witness has become the living broadcast. Una gave up her life to save a boy who can never leave his cage, so she decided to change the cage into a kingdom. The Choi Syndicate is gone, but the connection remains. Would you have stayed to save him, or would you have risked the flight? This concludes The Protected. If you loved Una and Hoseol's journey, smash that like button and subscribe for our next series. Comment always if you believe in their bond. Thanks for watching.